Hello, Year 9. I wanted to do another revision podcast for you on China, just because I didn't do every single lesson. And that means I can do this one to finish off China as a topic. So, there's only 2 lessons I didn't include before. The first one was lesson 6 about environmental problems. I want to cover it in a bit more detail. So ultimately, the UK used to go through the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s. Lots of factories, towns and cities grew quickly. But what happened is in the UK, in the 1970s, these factories closed down. But now in China, as you know, a lot of things are made in China. So China is developing faster than any country ever did in history. And now pollution is a massive problem because they're making the same mistakes the UK used to. Coal is the main reason for this. China has lots of coal. Now, it depends on coal for 70% of its energy needs. And what you do with coal is you burn it in power stations to generate energy, and in factories as well. And China's development is fueled by coal. And what this does when you burn it is quite dirty. Literally, it makes your skin black in terms of color and dirt, and things can get everywhere. But also, it gives off carbon dioxide when it burns. This is linked to global warming. Acidic gases can go in the air like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. They form, and not only can you actually make the air a bit dirty and dangerous, it can also cause acid rain. And I showed you pictures of the fog and clouds that China is now experiencing, not because of natural weather, but because of this. There's also other causes of pollution. Factories not only pollute the air, but also pollute rivers. They give off toxic chemicals and put them into the local water sources. Now, there are laws against this, but it's very hard to police. They're not often enforced. Producing lots of goods is the priority. It makes lots of money for the economy, and there's lots of people to make things for. More and more people also have cars. If you have a country, even though it's falling, but with still 1.3 billion people, you're going to have more people driving to work still. So carbon dioxide from the cars also causes pollution. And there's not nearly enough sewage works. China is not the richest country on terms of per person basis. So millions of tons of untreated waste from homes, factories and other businesses, they pour into streams every single day. Now, China suddenly in the year 2000 started to realize and be worried about pollution. But it's also under pressure from other countries too. It is the world's top producer of carbon dioxide. So it's trying to clear it up. And it plans to build more nuclear power stations and more wind farms and more dams for hydroelectricity that basically don't give off carbon dioxide but still produce the energy the country needs. It's also started to build more sewage plants. It still needs about another 150,000. And the rules are becoming tougher on factories that do cause pollution. Another problem I mentioned to you was desertification. What this basically means is when an area becomes like a desert. So farming area that maybe the soil's got worn away, or trees have been chopped down, or animals have overgrazed, or even farmers farming the soil too intensively, trying to get as much food as possible, have actually made the growth of food from these areas almost impossible. Farmers have had to take too much water from rivers and wells to water the crops before, so now there's less water. Rivers are drying up, soil is drying out, and it's growing useless. What can also happen in the spring is wind can carry the dry, exposed soil eastwards, and dust storms can go into major cities and even reach other countries like Japan. So what China is trying to do is trying to plant a belt of trees and shrubs called the Great Green Wall, and it's another 50 years or so before it'll be finished, 4,500 kilometers long, but the aim is to improve the soil and improve the air quality. And they're trying to also pump more water up from the Yangtze River to the dry north. This is called irrigation. We also looked at how air pollution, water pollution, desertification actually have causes and consequences. You have the answers in your book. And the last thing we looked at was the future of China, and about how it's hoping to make it be better, be more sustainable. It's hoping to improve its laws and its environment, because people have had a tough life. As I mentioned earlier, rural population, a lot of people half of China nearly live in rural areas, farmland areas, and there's not much money in these areas. A lot of people are poor. They rely on farming rice, wheat, and corn, and there's not that much money in it. There's a large amount of inequality. In the rural areas, they haven't got access to technology. They haven't got access to machinery. A lot of it is still done by hand, whereas in the city, Beijing, Shanghai, for example, they have lots of technology. And it's about people maybe working in rural areas, becoming migrant workers that have to move to the city to earn more money. Or even if you make the rural areas farming areas, China tries to make them urbanize themselves. Maybe they're building more buildings, more shops, more businesses. So China has one big dilemma going forward. It hasn't got enough farmland, there's too much erosion, and it has 1 in 5 people in the world are Chinese. But less than 7% of its land is farmland. It's lost a lot of farmland to urbanization over the years. So the government's worried about food shortages. So what it's done is it's set a bottom line for the amount of land to be kept for farming. It's set 120 million hectares minimum. It wants to modernize farming so it's easier, have more rights for people, trying to reduce the inequality. But it's also now buying farmland in other countries. So land in Africa and South America that is basically empty, China is paying the governments of those countries to farm there. Because simply put, it needs to. And that is China in a nutshell. Until the next one, guys, I'll see you soon. Any questions, come and find me. Ask me anytime.